This is kind of ironic. For those of you who watch these videos in sequence, I just posted a video entitled 10 Artists I Supposedly Hate. This artist might actually fit in with some of the ones that were mentioned on that video, so we're going to see how this goes. This is the first time I've ever spoken about this artist on the coverkillernation channel, which makes this a CKN debut. 2014 is all about newer, bigger, better, brighter things, so it makes sense. Of Mice and Men, their new album Restoring Force, their third album, and by the band's own words, a continuation of their last album, The Flood, which means that another weather system moved across the same area in which the flood took place, which caused more rain and precipitation to fall, which caused the flood to swell and became even larger and become even larger, and womp 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 weather speak. Yeah, I'm taking that metaphor a little far. Mice and Men is of note because one of the members of the band, the founder of the band, formerly was in Attack Attack and left to greener pastures to form this new band of Mice and Men, which is named after the novel of the same name. And, of course, most of us are probably very happy he left Attack Attack because Attack Attack is kind of, in one man's opinion at least, kind of poopy. However, this is a band that has garnered a lot more of attention as each passing album has gone by. The first album debuted in the Billboard at a position in the 100s. The second one actually was at number 28, which means that if you're a fan of trends and a friend of graphs, fan of graphs, whatever it may be, that means this one should probably break the top 25. They've gotten a lot of acclaim, they've gotten a lot of fans, and the band itself is seen as kind of a metalcore slash new metal idea that has sort of been redesigned a little bit for the new millennium, and that's what other people have said about the band. If you ask me, I get a lot of feelings from a little bit of both sides, but the new metal side I can definitely understand considering some of the names that come to mind. So listening to Restoring Force for the first time is kind of an interesting experience for me. Listening to Of Mice and Men for the first time is just kind of eye-opening because I'm wondering, you know, what all the hype is. That's kind of just how I am, and I can kind of understand it because there is a lot here that this band is able to offer that gives multiple subsections of fan bases a lot to really be very excited about. They have a good sound to them as far as the popular subsection of metal music is concerned. They definitely have a great feel to them, and they are able to blend enough of the harder style, the harsher style, screaming and growling, along with the clean singing that you have heard from a lot of bands in this subsection very, very nicely. There's a very nice yin and yang effect to it. There's now two vocalists. This is something that has started with this album, so we have a little bit more of a dynamisty going on between the vocals patterns. What also can be noted is that there are elements of a deathcore breakdown in the very first track, which the song was called Public Service Announcement, and immediately, of course, whenever you look at me and you hear deathcore breakdown and you watch the last video, you're thinking, oh crap, CKN just thought that was a big truckload of butt. Which, well, it was kind of something that I was a little bit worried about. I was hoping that this was not going to be a tedious 11-track affair that was going to be filled with stuff like that, especially whenever I looked at the title or the lengths of the songs and realized that nothing pushed the boundaries up to the 4-minute mark. But that wasn't the case. It's not what happened. Instead, we have a blend here. We have a blend of that style, which is something that only appears periodically. We have a lot of that new metal grace that a lot of people have been talking about. There's metalcore chugga-chugga riffs that have a little bit of a groove approach to it. So there's a lot of different things that are thrown together here. This is kind of a bit of a hybrid, but then again, whenever you have so many damn subsections in a genre of music, everything is really a hybrid. This is an album that I think is really very geared toward that one subsection, that population of music fans that actually happens to be the majority right now, where it's safe enough where you can, call yourself a metal fan, considering it has a lot of the abilities, it has a lot of the traits, but it also has a certain amount of safety to it. There's those clean vocals that really kind of accompany a lot of radio-friendly metal. Some individuals will say that this band reminds them a little bit of Slipknot, a little bit of the Deftones, and I can kind of understand where both of those traits really come to mind. You're Not Alone, the first single off of this album, definitely does give off a bit of a Deftones vibe with Of Mice and Men's own signature sound put to it. I'm also thinking of a couple of other bands, and I think one of the bands was From Zero that I'm trying to recall. There's a couple different ancient tomes from the first part of the 2000s. It's kind of like one-off albums that happened, and it was just it's something that really comes to mind, at least for me. And it's one of those things where they're just not really memorable enough for me to recall names. But you have to understand that at the turn of the millennium, nu metal was so large that you just sort of got a flood on the whole entire market with nu metal, and it was something where these bands would have maybe one single, one big hit, or at least a moderate radio hit, and that would be it. Of Mice and Men, though, they were able to combine enough sounds. They're able to kind of divide and conquer enough where this is going to be a band that has a longer appeal to them, I guess is the best way to put it. And that's because they have a lot of tools in their arsenal. They do have some very simplistic, some very basic song constructions and structure to them, and you know what, that's actually something that works to their benefit, because the individuals that are listening to these albums, they want something that has a very anthemic, a very angsty approach to it, but at the same time, not something that's going to really bog them down. They don't need to be bogged down with over-instrumentalization. They don't need to be bogged down by lengthy passages that really switch things up all of that much. This is not a band that necessarily have to be a micro-genre, circus of different styles and different subgenres that kind of turn at the drop of a hat. This is not one of those kinds of bands, and they don't need to be that kind of band, and they're not that kind of band. There's a ballad on here called Another You, which really reminds me of things like the Red Jumpsuit Apparatus. There have been some people that compare this band to The Devil Wears Prada, which people have been clamoring for me to review for ages and ages and ages, and I just have never gotten around to it. I think I've been mostly afraid to take the leap for fear of what might happen. The many plethora of things that I see on this album that are kind of wrong are more so just on a personal level, more so on a did I enjoy this level, and that's kind of not what reviewing is 100% all about, but I do have to really bring those up. This has always been a style of music that for me was one that kind of came forward and really, fiercely entertained me for a couple of months, and then as it just became a supervised flood by the system, it just became too much. It became obnoxious. It was an overabundance. So quickly that whole idea just kind of died off in my mind. This is a band that seems to really have a good tailor-made sound and feel to them. I hear a little bit of an elements of even some Chevelle in their songs, and I do like Chevelle a lot even to this day, so there's a lot here that I could actually, kind of dig. It's just not something that I would listen to on a consistent basis. I'm not going to be among those that's going to be within the fan base and kind of fighting for my life to, get to the front row if I were to ever go to an Of Mice and Men concert show, a concert experience. So this is not something that's 100% for me, but as far as the album itself is concerned, as far as the musicality, as far as the consistency is concerned, the band definitely seems to have brought their A game. They definitely have done everything in their power to ensure that this is going to be a worthy album. And this is also one that, from report, is going to be a dividing line for a lot of their fan base, considering this is almost like their way of going completely into this nu metal style of, or this nu metal department, and kind of going for a little bit more of a radio-friendly sound, while at the same time still maintaining that very direct and very angsty message that they've been able to provide ever since their debut. So the interest really right now is going to be with what I say after I give this a review and a score, and really what I read after the video is concluded. For me, at least, this is going to be an album that's only going to muster up like a 73 out of 100, and once again, this has zero to do with the fact that this is a terrible album. It's, overly bogged down and blah, blah, blah. This is an album that actually has a very good consistency to it, a good flow. It's not an album that overstays its welcome, so it's an experience that is kind of very wham, bam, thank you, sir, ma'am. But I feel as though this is a style of music where you have so many different appeals that can come here that you can sometimes get a little bit bogged down by that. And also, the dividing line here is going to be, was this kind of, radical turn to nu metal, more of a nu metal approach, something that Of Mice and Men fans are really going to be clamoring for? Is this something that was really a good move on their part? And aside from that, for me, I found only about 2 or 3 songs that were very appealing. The single You're Not Alone was one of them. Another You I actually found to be fairly decent, even though I'm not a huge fan of ballads, but it did give me it gave me the idea and the feeling of something different, and I do appreciate whenever bands do pull that off. Aside from that, the whole thing just sounds a little bit run-of-the-mill. It was kind of nice to reminisce a little bit to some of the older bands that the sound really is kind of shared with, although in a different way. But this is just an album that I probably will not be revisiting all of that much. but it does have a lot of value to it for those individuals who are curious enough to give it a try, and that's something that I actually encourage. Be forewarned, though, if you are a fan of black metal, death metal, thrash metal, something that has a constant aggressive edge, and really are not that big of a fan of any sort of clean singing or anything like that, I would avoid this album at all costs. But now, for the moment of truth, ladies and gentlemen, Cover Killer Nation, what did you think about this album? Did you listen to it? Did you not listen to it because you don't like this band? What do you think about this band? And fans of this band, is this a dividing line? Is this something that actually makes things change? Is it something that shifts up the whole playing field a little bit? Is it that different? What are your thoughts on this album? What are your thoughts on this band? Tell me in the comments. We can have some conversations regarding this. I'll talk to you guys later.